and or the 1969 year. If that storm would have come in here, what would we be doing today? Probably not really talking about this, but we'd be doing a little bit more cleanup and rebuilding again. Of course, take each hurricane season very heavily. What we want to encourage is, one, you prepare. And the message that we really want to kind of push this morning before we get into the 2019 season is, are you prepared personally? And when we say this, do you have that go kit? Are you ready to go? I look at the responders in here, and that message is 48 hours prior to landfall, every responder in here is already engaged at work. Is that we've gone to those, unfortunately, 12-hour shifts, if not 24-hour shifts, and we are trying to prepare the residents for what is about to happen to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. That water level is our big concern as we stand here on the island of the big island of Harrison County. We want you to remember that we have water all the way around us. You know, as I've said, and as the history will show, the Bay of St. Louis does meet the Bay of Biloxi once you go back into the waterways through the Big Lake and get into the Industrial Canal, which is developed in there. That gets into the Flat Branch and the Turkey Creek River, which goes over to Long Beach into Canal 1 and 2. Those actually are little creeks. That comes back to biopotash, which goes into the Bay of St. Louis. So you are on the Big Island. It is like Gulf Shores. It is like our neighbors to the east. And what we want you to do is to prepare and get ready to get off the Big Island when we start looking at those high surge values. That the Weather Service, the Hurricane Center, has really started to hone in on us as to what the values are. You know, we don't want to see the fire department riding it out on a station in East Biloxi on the top of the engine. Then that engine is not functional, and it's got to be replaced, and then that knocks the service down once we get to the sunshine, to the wind stop blowing, and we have to get back out and start rescuing our citizens and or our responders and those people that chose not to take the preparedness. Now, of course, the good part is that I'm fortunate to have a deputy director that also is a meteorologist. Now, of course, that's his profession by trade since he's retired on me, but I'm going to let him be the bearer of bad news about talking about the 2019 hurricane season. So, Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, sir, and I'll try to keep the news not too bad. If we could flip to the next slide. Couple of topics we're going to be covering today: the threat, our own personal preparedness, last season in a little more detail, as Rupert has already got that going. Revisit watches and warnings, make sure everybody understands what we're talking about there, and then a couple of topics as far as protective actions are concerned, our evacuations and sheltering, and then finish up with the outlook for this 2019 season. Next slide, please. So the hurricane threat is very real for our communities. It's happened before. It will likely happen again. And so as the tropical areas grow and develop and move towards us, those steering currents do track systems from the Caribbean and the Gulf in towards us. It is a eye-opening chart to see there on the right-hand side all of the systems that have landfalled along the Gulf Coast. And as those systems come in, as was mentioned earlier, the storm surge is a definite threat for our area. But that's not the only hazard associated with these storms. We also see the damaging winds, both the force they exert and the things that they pick up and throw as projectiles. We have the inland flooding, as we had Mother's Day weekend several weeks ago. All that water falling as rain has to go somewhere, and as it falls, it fills the low-lying areas and then comes downstream towards the coast. And then tornadoes, another threat, especially on that right front quadrant of the storm. We need to be prepared for all of these hazards associated with the hurricanes. Next slide, please. And preparedness means for ourselves, our families, and our workplaces. On the left-hand side there are some suggestions for things you can do to prepare your homes. At the station in the back, we have checklists that you can take with you that have all of these items and more. You're going to want to have your emergency supplies ready after you've got your home prepared. So make sure you've got those 5 days of food and water per person, and you have all those supplies that are going to get you through until stores are opened again or resupply stations are set up. And whether you're staying here locally or you are evacuating, you definitely want to have your go bag ready. Change of clothes, your cell phone chargers, your hygiene items, and at least 2 weeks of medication you want to take with you, as well as your important documents to help you recover afterwards. You don't want to be losing your birth certificates, your other important documents. Make sure those go with you in your go bags. Next slide, please. So last season, as Rupert mentioned, was very active. We saw numbers of storms above what is average. If you look out over 100 years, the average number of storms is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 of those hurricanes being major hurricanes. Last season, we had 15 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. And 3 of those named storms were very close to us here: Alberto, Gordon, and Michael. And if the steering currents had just been a little bit different, any one of those 3 could have been right here on our doorstep. Last season being an active season, as these storms do progress in towards us, the weather professionals at the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service in Slidell, and our NOAA partners are going to be getting the information out to us. Next slide, please. With watches and warnings. So just to make sure everybody is aware, the watch is letting the community know that it is possible those conditions are going to happen. And so 48 hours prior, we'll start seeing either a tropical storm watch or a hurricane watch that is put out. And you're going to be getting those over your NOAA weather radios. You'll be seeing it, of course, on television, radio, and other media. And, of course, everybody loves their cell phones. You will be getting alerts through your cell phones as well. And you don't have to sign up for wireless emergency alerts. The National Weather Service, through the notification systems, is going to send that directly to phones through the cell towers of affected areas. And so those will pop up into your phones. Just make sure you've got WEAs turned on in your settings on your cell phone. But the watch is letting people know that it is possible. It is now time to start taking those protective actions. And as the system moves closer, once we get to the 36-hour point, those watches will then be upgraded to warnings. At that point, we are expecting those conditions. And the last several years, the hurricane forecasters have gotten very, very good at predicting where these storms are going. So once it gets upgraded to the warning, you can pretty much bet that we are going to be seeing those conditions. Expect them to occur. Now, the last couple of years, because of the threat that storm surge does pose, the Weather Service has started putting out specifically a storm surge watch and a storm surge warning. And so for areas that are expecting those conditions, look for the storm surge watch and the storm surge warning to be put out. Next slide, please. Okay, so once the watches and the warnings are put out, we're going to be taking those protective actions. And evacuations are a great tool that we have in our toolkit. Everybody needs to understand what their evacuation zone is, though. We have 2 in Harrison County. You see those represented in the red and the yellow areas. And so make sure you understand where your home is, where it lies in an evacuation zone, where your workplace is, and make sure that everybody understands what their specific risk is associated with those zones. If an evacuation is ordered, we ask for everybody's cooperation in please following those evacuation orders. It is a serious thing if an evacuation is ordered, and people need to follow the guidance that is issued. Our evacuation maps are available at the table in the back, and those are produced by our partners at MDOT, showing you the safe routes out and away to safe locations. And as you're traveling along, you want to make sure that you're taking your go bags with you as well. Pets, if you do have a pet and you're taking your pet with you, try to remember to bring that crate along with you. There is a lot of hotels, a lot of shelters that are pet friendly now, and so it just makes things a little bit easier when you arrive to those locations if you have a crate and some food for your pets as well. And as you're traveling, of course, monitor the conditions as they are evolving, and keep track of the situation through local radio and media as well. Next slide, please. When you do get to that safe location, the sheltering is it's a challenging thing for any community, whether they are here in our local area or further away. But we ask that residents in those evacuation zones get to a safe location. The best case situation is going to family or friends inland, and if that's not an option for you, a hotel or a motel, but understand that a lot of people are going to be competing for these same hotels and motels. Regardless, you need to get to a sturdy building away from the coasts, the rivers, and the creeks. It is the water, rising water, that is the primary killer, and you need to get to a sturdy building away from those rivers, coasts, and creeks. Emergency shelters are a last resort. It is a temporary place to go away from the wind and the water. It's going to be safe, but likely not what you would call comfortable. And so if at all possible, we would recommend going to family and friends or to hotels and motels inland. The shelters will be a last resort. Next slide, please. So looking ahead to the upcoming season, 2019 looks to be an active season. And both the weather forecasters at NOAA and Colorado State, many other partners, they're telling us that all of their predictions are that it's going to be a near normal season. So for us, the information for us is to expect that active season and to take this time now to prepare, to set yourself up for success when we do have any system that potentially moves into our area. There's no way to know at this point in time where those storms are going to go, but we do know that it has happened before, it will happen again, and we need to be prepared for that. Next slide, please. You don't have to wait until the watch or the warning to be put out to start taking your actions. The National Weather Service, NOAA Hurricane Center, does put out a 5-day tropical outlook, and we really recommend you check this regularly throughout hurricane season. They will mark the areas that are potentially able to develop, and they'll give it a percentage, a low, medium, high chance of development. And this will give you 5 days looking out in the future to help you plan and prepare. So I really recommend people monitor this regularly from the National Hurricane Center. You just go to hurricanes.gov and it'll be right there for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so that is the recap of last season, looking ahead to this season, and our recommendations on how you can prepare now that we have entered hurricane season. But I'll be happy to take any questions now or at the end after we wrap things up. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rupert Lacey and Matt Stratton, for that information. Now I'm going to welcome up Archie Reeves with Mississippi Power. He's going to talk about generator and power line safety.
Thank you. How's everybody doing today? Good. My name is Archie Reeves. I work for Mississippi Power Company. I'll give you a little history of what happens before the storm gets here. Once we determine that our service territory is going to be affected by a storm, what we do is we start getting on the phone and we start bringing other utilities in and help in to get as close as they can get in and still be safe. Safety is our number one concern. And once the storm gets here and passes through, then we go ahead and we start bringing them in, and we immediately start doing assessments. Our assessments are for damages that we have and what we will need, how many people we will need to get everybody's lights back on as quickly as possible. But the main thing that we want everybody to be aware of is safety. So the things that we ask the public, everybody do not do, don't go around any down power lines. It doesn't matter what type of line it is. If it's a telephone line, TV cable, power line, we don't want you around them until they can be repaired. One of the things that we're very concerned with is generators. Generators, improperly installed generators can backfeed out on the power lines, and those lines will be sitting there energized on the ground. So one of the things we ask that you do is to follow your instructions, your generator safety instructions. Do not try to backfeed them, like take a generator and plug it into a wall receptacle and then backfeed through the house, because that way it can get back out onto the system. You need a properly installed switch that separates the generator from the power company. Another safety hazard involved with generators is people fear that, my house is on generator. I'm afraid somebody's going to come up in the middle of the night and steal my generator. So they'll put their generators on carports. They'll put their generators up close to a house. What you don't want happening is carbon monoxide poisoning from a generator. Unfortunately, every now and then you hear where the family's been injured and or worse in the event that carbon monoxide has gotten back up into the house where they're sleeping at night. In our restoration process, if your lights go out, certainly we want you to contact us and tell us. And if you don't need to call us every day. We know, but actually if you want to, we have an application or a website that you can actually go out on and look, and you can see the areas that we've restored. We update every so many hours during the hurricane season or during a storm as to who's back in lights, who's not. And so it kind of gives you an idea of when your light's going to be restored. We're going to try to get them restored as fast as possible. Hurricane Katrina is our landmark, and it took us 11 days to get the lights back on for everybody in Hurricane Katrina that could take them. So our goal is to get everybody healed. Getting power back is part of the healing process. So we want to do that, but we want to do it safely, and we want you all to remain safe as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Archie Reeves, for that information. Now I want to welcome up Casey Harrison with the Humane Society of South Mississippi to talk about pet preparedness.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Harrison. I'm the Director of Animal Services at the Humane Society of South Mississippi. I just want to go over a few key points with you today for being prepared to evacuate with your pets. You should always make sure that you have your current animal vaccination records with you. Rabies vaccinations are extremely important. If your pet is microchipped, make sure that your information is current and up to date. If your pet is not microchipped, we offer that at the shelter any time of year. Right now we actually have a vaccination and microchip package that we do during hurricane season, where you can come in and get your pet microchipped and a rabies vaccination for $20. You'll just come into our spay and neuter clinic. You do not have to have an appointment to come in for that. So if you have friends or family who would need to have any of those procedures done, please pass the word along to them. Please also make sure that you have a crate to travel for your pet. Hotel rooms would like for you to have a crate for your pet. If you're going to evacuate, make sure that you're calling your hotels that you're going to make sure that they allow pets. Any evacuation shelters that you're going to make sure that they also allow pets to be brought with you to those as well. Make sure that you have enough food, water to transport with your animal, because you don't know how far away you're going to have to go, and you don't know how long it's going to be before you can get back to where you might be able to purchase food for your animal. Also, make sure that you have toys, any kind of toys, squeaky toys, rope toys, something that's going to keep them occupied while you're away, raw hides, anything that will keep them occupied for long periods of time. Make sure that you have your evacuation route planned for you and your pet. Make sure that you have proper ID for your pet. You can do little pet ID cards. Make sure you also have up-to-date photographs of your pet in case your pet was to escape or get away from you in transport. And I think that is about it. So, thank you.
And thank you, Casey, for that information. Now I want to welcome up Bobby Carson. He's a City of Biloxi engineer, and he is going to talk about storm debris removal.
With the Biloxi Engineering Department. My name's Bobby Carson. I was asked to talk about storm debris removal. If it's a small storm, our Public Works is able to come in there, and they're capable of moving all the debris that needs to be removed to clear our streets out. If it's a larger storm, the city has a contract with a company that'll come in, and they have a lot of manpower. They've got a lot of trucks and vehicles to be able to do the removal themselves. They have in the contract, they have up to 70 hours to be here to start that removal. In the past, they've been much quicker than 70 hours, but they have up to that time. It's important to move the debris from the streets. You need your buses and your fire and your police, your AMR, utility companies. I mean, if they don't have access from point A to point B, nothing happens. After they remove the debris from the streets, they'll go back and they'll make several passes through the neighborhoods and individual streets to remove debris from private residents. They will make at least 2 passes. If it's a large storm, they'll make 3. So if you have your stuff out, if you see that your neighbor's stuff got picked up and you hadn't put it out yet, don't freak out. They'll come back a second time. There is a few things that we ask to make the effort more efficient. To put the debris next to the curb, but not in the street. Don't block the streets that we just cleared. You got 10 foot. You can put it up to 10 foot past the curb onto your property, and they'll be able to remove the debris off your property then. There's several categories. I think there's 6 categories that they ask that you have separate piles. One's for electronics, one's for large appliances and just vegetation and house garbage. If you could put them in different piles, for some reason it helps them out. So I say we do that if that's what they need. And last thing, we ask that y'all don't put the debris next to fire hydrants, over your water meters, next to mailbox or tree stumps. It slows the process down, and that's not good for anybody. So if they can get in and get out, the quicker they can do that, the quicker we can get to Walmart and get back to work. So if you have any questions, ask me. I'll be in the back of the room, and y'all can pass that one around. Thank you.
And thank you, Bobby, for that information. Now I want to welcome up Kevin Coggin with the Coast Transit Authority. He's going to talk about transportation to a shelter.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you all? all. Great to see you. I'm Kevin Coggan, Director of Coast Transit Authority. We've been through quite a few of these. I'm a native of Biloxi, lifelong resident of the coast, so I've been through Camille and Katrina, and I'm trying to make it another 4.5 years to retire before we have another one. So I got my fingers crossed. Let these younger folks take. You see all this gray hair? So I'm going to talk about before a storm and after a storm. There's two things we do. And the easiest thing we do, we've learned, is evacuation, because that's a short-term operation. So we're part of the Harrison County Emergency Management Agency. We manage the transportation component. We're actually in the Emergency Operations Center. When Rupert and his staff open the Emergency Operations Center, we're there. We have somebody there. I'm there. He has a great staff. He does a great job. They're very experienced. When we're under a hurricane warning, Rupert Lacey is the boss of Harrison County, basically. I'm really proud of the job they do. So all the resources that the community needs are at his disposal. So if our citizens need something, it's going to get done, and we're going to work together. I want to assure you of that. So our role to play before a hurricane is getting you to a shelter of last resort. That's key. We want you to leave. We want you to have a plan. But if you can't leave, we don't want anybody to be left in harm's way because they don't have transportation. That's where we come in. We provide curb-to-curb transportation to a shelter only, shelter of last resort. There'll be 4 or 5 shelters or more that'll open. That's Rupert's call, depending on the severity of the storm. All the information goes through his office, his agency. Watch the news. His public information officer will shove that out. I'll work directly with Rupert. We'll establish a 2 or 3 time frame that we will pick up members of the community and take them to a shelter of last resort. We have a registration system, a pre-registration system. I highly encourage the community to take advantage of that. It helps me let us know, my organization, what kind of resources we need ahead of a time, and we know where you are, and you have already told us you need help. We put you in our database, and we actually have an automated call-out system where our system will call you with a message, and it'll say something like, Harrison County Emergency Management Agency has ordered an evacuation of your zone. Call Coast Transit Authority now to arrange your ride. You don't have to be registered. You can call, but it makes our job easier. We have a 2 or 3 hour window of opportunity to get everybody in all of Harrison County to a shelter. What we do, the amount of service we do, depends on the severity of the storm. We all know that. If it's a low-level storm, people are not going to evacuate. If it's a Cat 5, we're all going to get scared, right, including me, and evacuate. So after the storm, we're going to get you back where you need to be. If we have a devastating event like a Camille or Katrina, we're going to be working with the Emergency Management Agency, and we're going to establish what kind of service does Coast Transit, your public transit agency, need to be doing to help the community get back on their feet. Where are the FEMA help places at? If you lost your house, where are the shelters people are going to live at? Where are the points of distribution? So we're going to know all that, and we're going to provide transportation to help the community get to help the community get back on their feet. After Hurricane Katrina, we ran free public transportation service for 3 months to help our community get back on their feet. We had people lost their homes, lost their cars, so whatever we need to do to help you, that's what we're going to be doing. So watch your TV, watch your media. Rupert, all of the information comes out of Rupert. He makes the calls. We just do whatever he needs us to do. And we all work together, all of the responders, and we're all experienced people. And so we've been through this before. And we don't do tabletop drills at Coast Transit Authority because we have enough storms. Every 2 or 3 years we're actually doing an evacuation, so it keeps us sharp. So I'll be around, and Susan will be around. We have a table here that has more information about what we do and how we do it. So if you need us, we're going to be here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin Coggin, for that information. Now I want to welcome our last speaker for this event. It is John McFarland with the American Red Cross, and he's going to talk about Red Cross preparedness.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. A couple of points up front. Hurricanes obviously are very scary, very deadly. You got to take them seriously. But if you have to be in a hurricane area, this is the best place to be because we have the most experienced and the most prepared emergency management organization around here. As Kevin mentioned, he's been doing this a long time. I've been with Red Cross as a volunteer or now as a executive director for 45 years. Rupert's been doing this forever. We know what we're doing, and we practice constantly, and there's a plan for everything. And if you just follow the plan, you'll get through this okay. It's not like this everywhere. A lot of places around the country, including a lot of places around Mississippi, they wait for the disaster to happen and then try to figure out where do we go from here. But here we've got a plan. And I would urge you, especially now, that when a storm comes, because it will, whether it's this year or next year, it's going to come, follow the official information. You'll get alerts from the emergency management. We will be contacting and keeping the news media up to date constantly. Follow that information because radio stations are going to be having open mics, letting people call in, and you're going to hear all kind of rumors and all kind of gossip. And I promise you, as good as it sounds, 95% of it is wrong. And it causes people to follow instructions that only get them into more trouble or create more problems for them. And with social media, you're going to see Facebook and YouTube and everything else just full of information, and 99% of that's going to be wrong. So just follow the basic instructions. What I want to talk about very quickly, and I've got plenty of literature outside just like everybody else, so if you want to know when we talk about having a kit and making it ready, what should be in that kit, it's in there. What to do in preparing for the storms, it's all there. Or you can download the free Red Cross apps, and again, they will alert you and they will remind you that you should be doing this, that, or whatever at this time. But whether we have a storm or not, today is the time to start the easy planning. For example, every time you go to the grocery store, buy an extra 8-pack of bottled water and bring it home and just store it someplace. When you go to the grocery store or to Walmart, buy an extra pack of crackers or the little cookies or the snack things that you can use that you don't have to need electricity for, and just set it aside. And just every time you go, just get a little bit of something extra and have it. If you don't use it, for the holidays when your guests come, you can feed them water and the cookies that you've been collecting all year long. Make sure, as was mentioned earlier, now check your insurance. Grab your birth certificate, grab your prescriptions, forms, all of those papers that are probably scattered all over your house. Put them all together in one place, preferably in one bag, so you know where it is. So that if you have to evacuate, you don't have to start thinking, geez, what do I need to take with me? It's all right there, okay? Now's the time to start thinking, what would I do if I have to evacuate? If we opened I think there are 42 shelters in the lower 6 counties, Rupert. If we opened every shelter, and that won't happen, but if we opened every shelter, the maximum capacity is about 14,000 people. And there are 420,000 of us in the lower 6. Plus you got 500,000 people in South Louisiana who would have to evacuate. So as Kevin and I think everyone else has said, especially if we're looking at a bad storm, get out. Now's the time to start making up with your in-laws upstate so that you can call them and say, look, we got a storm coming, can we come and stay a couple of days with you? Now's the time, as someone mentioned earlier, especially if you have pets, now's the time to start calling, if you don't have a family or some other place to go, to just start calling a couple of the hotels and motels in upstate Mississippi to find out, will you take pets, so that you have a couple of them and you have their phone numbers. And so then again, as the storm starts coming in, you know who to call and you know where to go. Those kind of things you can do now, okay? Now, quickly about what the Red Cross will do. In the event of a storm, the county emergency manager, Rupert or Matt, will decide which shelters will be open. They're the ones that make that call. When they do, then our responsibility is to staff them. So you will have a safe place to go for a storm. Preferably, you're gone. But if you have to be here, we will have shelters open, and they will be a safe place for you to go. After the storm, many of those shelters will become residential or post-storm shelters. We'll have cots. We'll have 3 meals a day. 2 of them will be hot meals and snacks for breakfast. And we will keep those shelters open as long as people need them. Now, that is not going to be a 1-week thing while the news cameras are here. We will be here until Rupert says we don't need them anymore. And they will be staffed and you will be fed. We will also be using our ERVs, the emergency response vehicles. These big things look like giant ambulances. We'll be going through the neighborhoods 3 times a day and providing food and water to people who are at home, either roaded out safely at home or have already returned home. Now, the first couple of days, while the streets are still littered with debris, don't expect lunch at noon sharp or dinner at 5:30, because depending upon where you are, your lunch may come at 10, it might come at 2, but it'll come, because the debris will be slowing us down. And generally what we'll do with the ERVs while the streets are covered with debris is go as far down the street as we possibly can, stop, and all of our ERVs have a big horn on it, a big siren, and they'll blow the siren and let people know we're there so you can come and get it. You don't have to bring identification to prove that there are 4 of you in the house. We take your word for it. So if you're hungry and you want an extra one, just come and tell us I need 6 dinners or I need 6 or whatever. You'll get what you need. So we will house you, shelter you, we will feed you. We will also have people going through the neighborhoods with emergency supplies. Things like tarps and bleach and masks, mold masks or bug masks, bug spray, comfort kits. Comfort kits have personal hygiene items in them, toothbrush, toothpaste, a washcloth, soap, things like that. And cleanup kits. And the cleanup kits will have a mop and a broom and a number of solvents that can be used to clean things out. So we'll be doing that. And again, that will go on for some time. And then we will also be providing casework. The caseworkers will be working with individual families to see what other assistance that you need, and a lot of it will be referring you to other agencies, but also we will be providing emergency financial assistance to people that need it. Now that will usually come a couple of weeks after the storm, because before we start shelling out money, we do a damage assessment. We ride every street, we look at every house, and we capture information about the extent of damage to that house. So when you come to us and tell us that you live at 123 Maple, we'll hit the computer, we'll have a picture, and we'll have a description of exactly what the damage is, so we have a better idea of how to serve you. I want to close by just a couple of mentions. One is, talked about pets. Please, if you bring pets to the shelter, bring them in a cage. There are laws health laws, that require us to separate animals from people in a shelter, and sometimes for obvious reasons. But also, that little Chihuahua, who's the sweetest thing in the world, and you know everybody loves them, will drive the other 300 people crazy in that shelter. So we separate the animals from the people in the shelter, and that's why we want them in a cage. A lot of places around the country and a lot of places in Mississippi, the Humane Society will staff a shelter, and they'll take care of them. We don't have that going on down here right now. So if you have to bring the pets, bring them, but please, please, please have them in a cage. The other thing I want to mention about shelters themselves, there are 2 kinds of shelters. There's the evacuation shelters. Sometimes they're called the safe room. That's the place you're going to go when the hurricane warning comes and it's just time to get out of the area. We don't set up cots in those evacuation shelters for this reason. The Americans for Disability Act requires federal law, and since we are a nonprofit agency, but we operate under a congressional charter when it comes to disaster release, we have to follow the laws. And federal law it used to require 40 square feet around a cot. Now I think it's been moved to 60 feet. I think they just adjusted it to 60. So that people who have handicaps or in a wheelchair or whatever can move around them. Well, when you need that much room for a cot, there's not enough room for people. For example, I think the closest shelter around here that would be open would be D'Iberville High School. That's your call, and I'm not going to tell you that's what's going to happen, but that's usually the one that's open first. All of the shelters, the evacuation shelters, are north of the interstate. The last thing that Rupert wants to do, and certainly the last thing we want to do, is put you in a shelter that's going to get blown away by hurricane force winds, or is located on a street that floods in a storm, so that emergency services people can't get to you in the shelter if something happens. So the closest one for you will probably be D'Iberville High School. It is rated had to have a capacity of 1,025 people for evacuations. That's cramming them in, but that would be a safe place because it is a very reinforced building. But if we put cots out, we would only be able to fit about 100 people. So we don't put the cots out for the evacuation shelters, for the evacuation. We ask you to keep in mind you're not going to be there long. You're just going to be there till the storm blows through. So bring a pillow or bring something to sit on. If you want to bring folding chairs, bring those in. There will be some chairs in the shelter. We do keep some cots in every shelter, so there's always going to be somebody that has to have a place to lie down, and we'll pull a cot out for them. But don't expect to go to the evacuation shelter and have your own cot for that reason. Now, once the storm blows through and people are allowed to go back home, Rupert gives them the all clear and they can go home, check on their property or whatever, we immediately turn those shelters into more of a residential shelter. That's where the cots come out, where everybody will have a cot, where everybody will have 3 meals a day in the shelter, and they will be able to stay there for as long as they need to. We will also have health and mental health health and mental health workers in the shelters. They'll either be staying in there or they'll be visiting the shelter. These are professional nurses, doctors, mental health professionals who donate their time to the Red Cross after disasters. So if you have an issue and you need some first aid or some medical care or something very quickly, there'll be somebody there to help you, or they can get on the phone and call them. In fact, even the IRBs that are delivering food through the neighborhoods will usually have a nurse on several of them, or they can get on the phone and quickly call one. And then we'll also have the caseworkers there. So pre-storm, when you get the order to evacuate, smartest thing to do is get out. But if you have to stay, there will be shelters available. Listen to the official information about which shelters will be open, because they're not going to open every one for a lot of reasons. Some of them is depending upon which way the wind's going and the water's going. I mean, they're for safety reasons. And so don't listen to your friend and say, oh, I always go over to old Biloxi High School, because you can go there, but it won't be a shelter. So just listen to the official information. Prepare to just ride out the storm and bring something to sit on, bring a blanket or whatever else you need. There will be snacks. There will be water, there will be coffee, there will be soft drinks in there, but we don't put cots out for everybody for the reason I just mentioned. The law requires all that space around them, and there wouldn't be enough room for people. Once you leave, once the storm has passed through, and for those people that need long-term things, yes, there'll be cots, blankets, be changed regularly, and we try to make it as comfortable as possible. It's not a hotel, but we try to make it as comfortable as possible. I think that's it. Anybody have any questions? If not, let's hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Thanks.
Thank you very much, John, for that information. And this concludes our speaking portion of the event. I, Cecilia Dawes Walton, on behalf of the City of Biloxi, all of our first responders, and all the officials that were here today, want to thank all of y'all for coming out to this event. Please make sure that you're prepared, sign up for necessary needs that are available, and don't forget to sign up for Be Alert. It's the City of Biloxi's messaging system where we send traffic advisory and weather advisories to your cell phone. All you have to do is text BILOXI to 888-777. That's Biloxi to 888-777. Again, thank you very much.
As you know, it's hurricane season. At some point, you might have to evacuate.
Waiting until a hurricane warning has been issued is not the best time to pick a route. It's time to plan ahead, and that means taking alternate routes north. Everyone cannot evacuate using just Highway 49 north. That's why MDOT has mapped out more than 20 ways to evacuate to the north to get out of the storm's path.
Download the complete hurricane evacuation guide at gomdot.com and plan your way out today.
For being here today. It truly is exciting. And don't hit some points that I want to say. We're building a new dance floor down here. Okay? And everybody will be proud of what this presents to not only your customers, but our citizens of Biloxi. And really, I think about what was on this corner, what was right there, and what was right here. And I was born right at the end of the corner, 1947. Most in the middle of the 47 hurricane. We had City Hall Grocery. And I can tell you, the Star Grocery was there, Coquette's, anyway, you don't even know all that thrift and that. But it is truly exciting, and every day, the opportunity we have here, I think our generations to come, our kids and our grandkids, will creating memories and creating, do you remember when? Because I remember when. And for me, it's exciting. I'm a little bit selfish.